Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Another week, another episode. This is Stats Over Politics. As always, I'm your host, Sean Holko, alongside my guy, Mr. Kevin Dent. Jaevon Toddy, the Podfather, will be unable to join us here on episode number 189. But as Kevin always likes to say, we got to bring you the content. So here we are as we're back for another week, another episode here on Stats Over Politics. 189. We're closing in on 200, which man, I thought it was an accomplishment when Jaevon and I hit 100 episodes on Shaun and Vaughn that preceded this podcast. And now we're closing in on 200. It's pretty awesome. I'm excited. And Kevin, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing well, man. Unfortunately, LeBron wasn't able to get it done today. Shaun and I were talking about it before the show. They started off really hot, but we'll definitely get into that. But it's basketball. It's the best time to be a fan for the basketball. I know a lot of people are down on the NBA currently with all the outside stuff going on, but for all the basketball maniacs like the people here on this podcast, NBA playoffs is where we get the best basketball. So it's been a crazy first round, and the second rounds are gonna only continue to be even more and more crazier. And we got to take these days when we have multiple games in, because this time in about a week and a half it's going to be one game a day.
Exactly, as today is Cinco de Mayo in the year of 2026, and it's my birth month, so I love May. But also, I would probably say that this is the best month of basketball every year. And the reason why I say that, no shade to March Madness, but the reason why I say that is because, as Kevin was alluding to, you're getting 4 conference finals matchups. But also, the WNBA starts on Saturday. So I'm pumped about that. The NBA draft lottery is coming up real soon. And so this is the best month to be a basketball fan. And so, Kevin, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it with the first series that kicked us off in the conference semifinals, which was last night. And it wasn't much of a game, but we shall still talk about it, as the New York Knicks beat down the Philadelphia 76ers 137-98 in game 1 of that series. We didn't get a chance to recap the first round of the playoffs as we were off last week, but the 76ers won a 7-game series against the Boston Celtics, finished it off in Boston at the Garden, came back from down 3-1. Jaevon and Alex probably weren't very happy with how that series turned out. But shout out to my friend Matthew Pearson, who has watched, between him being a Kings and 76ers fan, he has watched his favorite basketball team lose 9 consecutive Game 7s. And he finally got to see his team win a Game 7. They beat Boston for the first time since 1982. So congratulations to the 76ers. But it showed last night that they were still thinking about the first round and not focused on the second round. Then on the other side, the Knicks, who went down 2-1 to the Atlanta Hawks, end up rattling off 3 straight wins to finish that series in 6. And they were up by like 45 points in the first half of Game 6 in Atlanta. Like, we talk about how last night's game between the Knicks and the 76ers was a blowout. That Game 6 in Atlanta was far worse. Nevertheless, the Knicks start off hot. They keep it going as they beat the 76ers by nearly 40 points. Kevin, what was your reaction to this one?
I kind of anticipated a game like this, not 40 points per se, but the Sixers, like she just mentioned, coming off a Game 7 versus the Boston Celtics, in a series where they came back 3-1. You get Joel back, and he's the first person to miss 3 games of a series and score 100 points in his playoff series. So Joel Embiid really came back and made a difference. We talked about the impact of an Al Horford, of a Kristaps Porzingis, and now you got our guy Neemias Queta and Nikola Vucevic, and they just really couldn't mess with him. So he came back and really had his imprint on this game. VJ Eshkom had a great last series, but kind of just focusing on this game, coming off of a 7-game series and expecting to play a team that's been off for 5 days, maybe 4 days, I believe. This team was rolling. This team got going early. And the Sixers really never stood a chance. So it's really hard to play a team off of rest. And you can definitely tell the Sixers were just a step behind when it always came to things. You saw Joel Embiid get banged up, so hopefully that he's going to be okay going into game 2. But I definitely expect games 2 and 3 to be a lot closer. Typically in game 1s, they're kind of just toss-up games anyways. It's where you kind of get to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You're going to play this team at least for guaranteed 4 times. So one game is kind of a toss-up. A playoff series doesn't start until it's the road team wins. So tomorrow will be definitely an interesting game to see. The Sixers got to see how they're going to guard Tyrese Maxey. VJ Escom got to really come to play because he scoring 12 points, going 5-11 from the field. He really wasn't a threat that he was in the first round. Paul George continued to be Paul George, but Joel Embiid is still battling back from injury. Yes, he's not scoring 31 points, grabbing 10 boards, but 14 points and 4 rebounds. Yes, the stats look that way because they didn't play a full game. So I'm expecting the 76ers to come back to play next week or tomorrow, the next game. Tyrese Maxey took him a little bit while to get going. And then once he did get going, it was a little bit too late. But Jalen Brunson, man, he is showing why he is an all NBA player and why he's a top 5 point guard into his game. This team has depth on depth. And it's funny when you say New York Knicks basketball and depth in the same sentence because we have seen them for the past 3 years with Tom Thibodeau. They're only playing 6 guys. Yesterday, everybody but one person played. So they're letting their team play. We've seen guys like Mikal Bridges finally start coming to light. They traded 5 first-round picks for him, so this is the kind of output they're looking for. 17 points being the tied for the third most points. 3 out of the 5 starters scored double digits, excluding Josh Hart because that's not really his role. But Cat was able to get it going. OG Anunoby was able to get it going. And when 4 of your starters put up at least 17 points, it's going to be a long night. So the 76ers have a lot of things to get to. They don't have that depth that the New York Knicks do. But like I said, game 2 is a whole different game. They kind of get that rest because I know it was a quick turnaround, quick travel following the game 7 versus Boston. And then coming off such a high and then now having to kind of come back down to earth and play a series is going to be challenging. But like I said, game 2, I'm expecting a lot better of a game. I don't know if I'll pick the Sixers to win game 2, but I definitely think they're going to have a better showing.
Yeah, and when it comes to Joel Embiid, I just wanted to give him a shout out real quickly, circling back to that Boston series, because when Embiid returned from injury and he had an now I'm stumbling on the word. He had to get his appendix removed. Like he had an appendectomy. There we go. Got it. Third try. But for him to come back 2 weeks later and to play the way that he did, he really shifted that series. And the Philly fans were chanting, "We want Boston. We want Boston," going into the playoffs. And for Joel Embiid to not only return from injury, but specifically play the way that he did in game 7. And then even after game 7, reporters were asking him like, "Oh, you were getting stretched out on the court, laying on the hardwood, and you went to the locker room. How's your injury? Were you dealing with injuries?" And Joel said, "I was fine. I was faking it." In typical Joel Embiid fashion, that was a major cap right there. But like you said, the Sixers are going to need him. And VJ Edgecombe, he is probably the X factor for why Philly won that series and why they're playing in the semis right now. And they basically turned Paul George into a 4th option, which is crazy because I did not think the 76ers, along with everyone else, I didn't think that they would beat Boston because, number one, I didn't know if Joel was going to come back, period. But I didn't necessarily expect VJ Edgecombe to step up the way he did. So I thought Paul George was going to be 2nd option behind Tyrese Maxey. But to have Paul George as your 4th option, that is a luxury. And like you were saying just about depth with the Knicks, the 76ers have a lot more depth than I expected them to. And so this series is going to be quite interesting, which now, Kevin, we pivot to, yes, we've already seen game 1. We know that the Knicks are up 1-0, but we're going to make some predictions now for each series as we go through it. So first, Kevin, if you could start us off, who do you got winning this series and how many games?
I'm gonna go Knicks in 6. I wanted to do Knicks in 5, but I think the Sixers might win game 2, but I definitely think they'll split, each winning on their home floor. It's going to be hard to win on the road, but I feel like once it gets down to that nitty-gritty, I think the Knicks are going to show why they're the better team. So I would definitely go Knicks in 6.
We're on the same page there. I'm also going Knicks in 6. You hear a lot of Knicks fans saying Knicks in 6, doing the chant, but I would probably go Knicks in 5 as well, just because they have been on an absolute roll since losing Game 3 in Atlanta. But, you know, I am not sleeping on the 76ers team. Based on what I saw in that Boston series, I even considered picking the Knicks in 7, but I'm going to go Knicks in 6 because I think that they still won in Philly, and then they probably end up finishing it off in Philly. Well, they would have to finish it off in Philly to win in 6, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Sixers get a game in New York as well. So that would lead to the Knicks having to get 2 in Philly. I think it's quite likely. Joel Embiid was pleading to 76ers fans, like, please don't sell your tickets. The last time we played the Knicks in the playoffs 2 years ago, it was like MSG East when it's actually MSG West if you look geography. Nevertheless, Knicks fans travel well, just like your Philadelphia Eagles, like my San Francisco 49ers. And so if the arena, they changed the name recently. It's not the Wells Fargo Center anymore. But if the arena in Philly is basically MSG West, then that is going to be to the detriment, obviously, of the 76ers, because home court advantage really matters in the playoffs, specifically when it comes to just getting the crowd into it and getting that momentum and the energy behind you. And we even saw that in Game 7 in Boston, where when Boston was chipping away, the crowd was right behind them, and it was like that extra boost. If the 76ers can't get that at home, then it very likely might be Knicks in 5, if not Knicks in 4. But we're both going Knicks in 6. So now we pivot to the other game from Monday night, which was the Timberwolves going on the road, beating the Spurs 104-102. Shout out to our guy Wes, because I know that he was jumping for joy and so happy from last night's outcome. I certainly did not expect it. It was a great game. And Victor Wembanyama, man, he had a triple-double in this game. And normally I would have saved this for Sean's pop quiz, but since Toddy's not here, we're going to save those for when both of you guys are here, just for the sake of fairness when it comes to the overall scoreboard. But Victor Wembanyama became the 3rd player since blocks were made official in 1973-74 to have a playoff triple-double with 10-plus blocks. He joins Hakeem Olajuwon and Andrew Bynum, who did it in 1990 and 2012, respectively. Victor Wembanyama finishes with 11 points, 15 rebounds, and 12 blocks. The problem from last night's game is the fact that Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox, arguably San Antonio's 2 best players, combined for 21 points. That's a problem. But the silver lining, as a reporter asked Victor Wembanyama after the game, and Victor said, I don't know what a silver lining is, but the silver lining here is the fact that their 2 best players combined for 21 points, and they only lost by 2. That's the positive. So I am confident that the Spurs will still win this series. But, Kevin, what was your reaction to the Timberwolves beating the Spurs?
Huge game. We talked about what this Timberwolves team has been able to do without Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo. We saw Dante go down with an Achilles, and we saw Ant miss the remainder of the series, I think the last 3 games with a bone bruise. So for them to win a game with him coming off the bench and scoring 18 points says a lot about this team. And I know it's playoff time, so I know every time the playoffs come around, the Rudy Gobert jokes come out because they play him off the floor. But he came and he balled, man. He showed why he is who he is. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. And I know that Victor was the first unanimous one, and as long as he stays healthy, he'll be unanimous throughout the rest of his career. Rudy Gobert is here, and he's let him know that you're not just going to bully me. It's essentially Rudy's little brother. They played on the European team. He's seen Victor grow up. So he definitely went out there and wanted to make sure that his presence was felt. And another guy who made his presence felt was Mike Conley. Mike Conley was traded from this team 2 times and waived from both teams and then re-signed with him the next day as a free agent. He is the heart and soul of this team. They got rid of Rob Dillingham. Shaun and I have different opinions on him, but that's neither here nor there. But when Dante goes down and I'm gonna just say Io, he goes down. Dusomu. So when both of their point guards go down, it's only Mike Conley. For him to play 24 minutes, 12 points, 6 assists, and 2 rebounds, and Terrence Shannon Jr., another guy who's had his first playoff start in Game 6. These guys are being thrown into the fire. This team, a lot of people forget, this team has been in the Western Conference Finals the past 2 seasons. And if it wasn't for a Luka, if it wasn't for a Thunder, they could possibly go to the finals. That's with a healthy Anthony Edwards. So now that Anthony Edwards is slowly being able to get back in the rhythm, I think this Timberwolves team is going to be scary. But this Spurs team, I've been saying it all year. When people are telling me they think the Spurs are going to win it all, I'm like, you know what? We thought the 2024 Thunder were going to win it all. When you don't have the experience, it shows up in moments like this, and it showed. De'Aaron Fox in his 11 years career, I believe, just got his first playoff victory, playoff series victory. And Luke Cornett, those are the only guys that have ever played in a playoff series. So now that these other guys are finally starting to get their feet wet, the Dylan Harper, the Devin Vassell's, the Stephon Castles, the Victor Wembanyama's, it's going to take them a while to really get to that level. And like Shaun mentioned in the beginning of the segment, their best players combined for 21 points and lost by 2 points. So the Spurs are going to be fine. But a game like this is probably going to be better for them in the long run, just to show that, everyone says we're the Victor Wembanyama and sidekicks, but when he didn't show up, we were still able to win some games. When he missed Game 3 last round, we were still able to get the W. So it builds confidence in the other guys. Unfortunately, in the box score shows that they lost. But there's a lot of things to take away from this as a Spurs fan.
Yeah, and since you mentioned your guy Rob Dillingham, I would just point out the fact that Ayo Dosunmu dropped 45 points in a playoff game, and he led the Timberwolves to a win. And I'm pretty sure that was the game that Anthony Edwards went out hurt, and Dante DiVincenzo ruptured his Achilles. And so for Ayo to step up and drop a 45 piece in a playoff win, you may argue otherwise, but I don't know if Rob is capable of doing that. So the fact that the Timberwolves traded Rob Dillingham for Ayo Dosunmu to the Bulls, I think that they absolutely fleeced Chicago. But who knows? Rob, he started to emerge in Chicago. He started to prove me wrong. Kevin and I were going back and forth in our Stats Over Politics fantasy football group chat about Devin Carter versus Rob Dillingham. And, when it comes to Rob Dillingham versus Devin Carter, I think Rob Dillingham is probably going to be the better player long term, and I can take the L for that. But when it comes to Rob Dillingham versus Ayo Dosunmu, a guy who was like a breakout player during his days playing for the Illini at the University of Illinois, I think that the Timberwolves definitely won that trade. And I was really happy to see Anthony Edwards come back to start this series against San Antonio, because when he landed and his knee kind of buckled and it looked like it was an overextension, I was really scared. And we just saw Dante DiVincenzo, who has the worst luck when it comes to injuries, because the guy played 82 games this season. He played every single game of the regular season just to get hurt in the first round of the playoffs and now be done. You think back to 2021 when the Milwaukee Bucks won the championship and Dante DiVincenzo was on that team. He went out with a season-ending injury that season too. So I feel real bad for Dante. As Sacramento Kings fans, it's like he didn't really have the best tenure in Sacramento, but he is a great contributor, especially on these playoff teams. So my heart breaks for Dante, but I'm really glad that Ant was able to get back, because I thought when Ant and Dante went out, I thought the Timberwolves were cooked. And then somehow they still went on to win that series in the manner that they did. So kudos to them. They knock out Denver. And as Nikola Jokic said in his press conference following the elimination, a reporter asked him, do you think that your team is a championship contender? And he was like, we just got eliminated in the first round. So no. And if we were in Serbia, all of us would be fired. And so that may be an indictment on the Denver Nuggets, but the Timberwolves still had to go out there and win the series. And now the Timberwolves have gone into San Antonio, won game 1, against the Spurs, who were a team that a lot of people basically locked up as a conference finalist to match up in that inevitable series against Oklahoma City. The Timberwolves, everyone forgets, they've made it to the conference finals for 2 consecutive years. They're going for a three-peat, and they want to get past the conference finals this year. So don't sleep on the Timberwolves, although when it comes to series predictions, I just said all of that to pick the Spurs in 6 games. How about you, Kevin?
Taking the Timberwolves in 6.
Would you have okay? But would you have said that before last night's game? Because as we talked about in the pre-show meeting, we're making these predictions basically what we would have picked before each game 1 was played. I would have picked the Spurs in 6. After last night's game, I'd probably go Spurs in 7, but I'm sticking with what I would have thought. Would you have picked the Timberwolves in 6 before this series started?
Yeah, I mean, obviously no one was going to pick them against the Spurs. I mean, against the Blazers, but this team doesn't have the experience. So at some point they're going to lose. I don't have them going to the finals just because they don't have the experience. And I get it, people are going to tell me they beat the Thunder 3 times in the regular season, but that's the regular season. This is the playoffs. So I just think that the inexperience is going to bite them in the butt. And like we said, we've been talking about this Timberwolves team knocking at the door for the past 2 years. So if anyone's hungry and knows how to get there, it's them. So you're telling me a team of unexperienced team is going against a team full of dudes that's been there? I'm going to take the dudes that have been there, no matter what the name on the team says. So I was going to take the Timberwolves before this series, and the odds look incredibly good. And the people weren't giving them any credit. But what I saw out of this team without Ant, you're telling me you can beat the not the reigning champs, but a championship team in the Denver Nuggets? Why can't you beat the Spurs? So because of what they were able to do, not only on the offensive end, but what they were able to do on the defensive end, Jamal Murray, all-star, in shambles. Jokic, yes, he was having triple-doubles, but he was averaging 30 points in the regular season. He was averaging 14 points in the series. So their defense is one of the biggest reasons why I was going to take them over them, the defense and the experience. So I'm a really big fan of the Timberwolves. I don't think they're going to get to the finals, unfortunately. I think, like I said, maybe my take comes to life in a couple of years when they do the rearranging of the teams. Maybe they go to the East. Maybe they get there. But going to the Thunder is going to be hard, but I definitely can see them getting past the Timberwolves or the Spurs.
Yeah, when you talk about the defense, and you hinted earlier about the relationship of Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama had a very poor shooting performance in game 1. And a lot of people are like, oh, Victor just had a bad night. No, he was playing against a guy who, if I remember correctly, Kevin, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert. And so it's like, he's the only guy who's done that, if I recall correctly. I know there's been a handful of guys to do it 3 times. But Rudy Gobert is like in NBA, like I just said like 40 times. But my point being is that a lot of people like to hate on Rudy Gobert because of all the COVID stuff or the compensation that Utah got when they traded for him, so on and so forth. But Rudy Gobert is a future Hall of Famer. You can hate it, whatever. First ballot, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. No one's done that. And so he is, they call Victor Wembanyama the Stifle Tower. Rudy Gobert is the OG Stifle Tower. And so he was all over Victor, and Victor is going to have to find a way to make adjustments. Maybe they're going to have to run some pick and rolls with Victor just to get Rudy off of him. But the Timberwolves still have plenty of great players on this team. And one other guy that I want to mention before we move on to the next series, Jaden McDaniels. If you had told me coming into these playoffs that Jaden McDaniels would be the X factor for the Timberwolves, I would not have believed you. Jaden McDaniels, to me, is a role player. But he has shown throughout these playoffs that he is really emerging. He's getting better and better. And, yeah, not only will he scrap with Nikola Jokic at the end of a game because Jaden is scoring when the Timberwolves are up by a lot of points, and it's not necessarily sportsmanlike to do that. But Jaden does not care. He does not care if he's matched up against LeBron James, Jamal Murray, whoever, he is there to lock them up. And that is the identity of this Timberwolves team, as you already alluded to, Kevin. And so shout out to Chris Finch as well. And the last thing I want to say in regard to this series is Anthony Edwards was being interviewed by Peacock and the NBC crew last night after the game. And he was just focused on what he could have done better. He said, I gave up 2 offensive rebounds. I gave up this. I gave up that. I had a turnover. And he wasn't focused on the fact that they just got an upset win to start a conference semifinal series. He was focused on what he could have done better. And that's the identity of this Timberwolves team. And that's why, I was really surprised when they took game 1 last night. But I won't be shocked if the Timberwolves win this series simply because of what the identity of this Minnesota team is. But again, I'm kind of contradicting myself because I got the Spurs in 6. Now moving on here on episode 189 of Stats Over Politics, Sean Holko alongside Kevin Dent. We're moving on now to the other Eastern Conference Finals series, which got started tonight, and that was the Pistons beating the Cavaliers 111-101. This is the one series that I'm not necessarily too excited about, and I probably should be much more excited about it than I am about Thunder and Lakers. And the reason why I'm not really excited about this series, Kevin, is because both of these teams kind of struggled to get into the conference semifinals. And it's like, okay, the Cavaliers, they had a chance to finish off the Raptors in 6 games, but then you have RJ Barrett hit a hell of a shot, another one that clanks off the back iron and shoots up into the Toronto sky, and then it lands into the bucket, and they survive. And then on the other hand, you have the Pistons, who lost game 1 at home against the 8 seed Magic, and then they go down 3-1 to the Magic. But then history repeats itself from 2003, where Orlando is up on Detroit 3-1, and they blew a 3-1 series lead. The Pistons advance, and now we have the Pistons and the Cavaliers. And it's really ironic that this is probably the series that I'm the least thrilled about, because these are the 2 Eastern Conference teams that I was the highest on in March. Like, I got a lot of shit for saying that the Celtics were going to be eliminated in the conference semifinals and they would not get back to the conference finals. And hey, what do you know? They got knocked out in the first round. That was honestly lucky on my part, because when they got up 3-1, I was like, all right, my take is looking absolutely freezing cold. Nevertheless, it was because I had so much belief in the Pistons from what they did this season, specifically before Cade went out injured with a punctured lung, and the Cavaliers, who once they acquired James Harden, Keon Ellis, among others, I was really high on this Cavaliers team. Meanwhile, James Harden, in typical James Harden fashion, from what we've seen a majority of the time from him in the playoffs, he struggles throughout the Toronto series, and he struggled again tonight as the Pistons beat the Cavaliers 111-101. But even though it was decided by double digits, it was a pretty competitive game, Kevin. So what was your reaction to Pistons handling business in game 1 in this series?
Like you said, this easily could have been a Raptors versus Magic series. Both of these teams didn't play their best ball. You mentioned the Pistons being down 3-1 and the Raptors coming back from a 3-1 deficit. Not to win, but they were able to come back and force that game 7. The Cavaliers have always been known for, unless LeBron James is on the team, obviously, that they're going to struggle. Donovan Mitchell's not been past the second round in his career. And to think about Donovan Mitchell and the Evan Mobleys, the Darius Garlands, the Jared Allens, the J.B. Bickerstaff, like he used to be on that staff. He used to be the head coach. So if anyone knows this team in and out, it's him. So the Cavs came in this game and started off really, really slow. And the Pistons were able to let them back in this game. I really hope the Cavaliers figure it out for a lot of bias. I really wanted the Pistons to lose game round 1 because I think they need to go all in and get Cade another guy. I love the Star Thompsons. I love the Ron Hollands. I love the Tobias Harrises. But it's like, if we can get a solidified number 2, this team looks a lot different. Jalen Duren was an All-NBA player, arguably first-team All-NBA. That first round, he was in a shambles. He wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. Wendell Carter really gave him problems, and we didn't see that today with Jalen Duren. He had 11 points and 11 points and 12 rebounds. He was this guy who was averaging 20 points in the regular season. And we're starting to kind of see maybe they're looking like the Orlando Magic 2.0. When Cade was down with the kidney or the ruptured lung, Jalen Duren was playing his best basketball. Now that Jalen Duren is not the focal point, he's really struggling to get the ball going and really figuring it out. So Tobias Harris has had to step in and be that number two. So it's great when it works, but when it doesn't work, we've seen it, what it looks like. Cade is single-handedly having to carry this team over the hump. So if the others don't have a good night, they're arguably going to get blown out. So the Pistons, like I said, they were able to get game one. Both these teams coming off of game sevens. Another night where Tobias Harris gives you 20 points. Another game where Duncan Robinson was able to give you 19 points. So the others just played better today than the Cavaliers. Others, I know Max Strus hit 4 threes, but James Harden had more turnovers than made shots. That can't happen. We didn't trade a young superstar in Darius Garland, an all-star, for you to come in here and not play well. So I know one of my best friends, Kenny, is a James Harden fanatic, but he can't play that way. And I understand that we always talk about Game 7, James Harden, and the struggles that he had. He played like shit in Game 7. They just happened to win. They were just a better team. So this inconsistent play of James Harden has got to come back and bite the Cavs in the ass. So when we do, I'll say this for the predictions, but I am torn both ways for these predictions.
So before we get to those predictions, we do have a comment on YouTube, and I believe that this may be our guy, Mr. Vonnie V. Lone, because that name is Stats Over Politics 34, but the icon is a V. So that leads me to assume it may be our guy, Vonnie, who says, D-Book to the Motor City? What's your thoughts on that, Kevin?
D-Book, Giannis, Kevin Durant. They need another guy that can put the ball in the basket. They don't need another guy that can run off a screen. They don't need another Tobias Harris or Duncan Robinson. Getting a guy like Devin Booker to Detroit, where he's from, would be great. But Devin Booker is cut from a different cloth. He's cut from that 2000 basketball cloth. He wants to stay and play for the place where he's been drafted. And yes, it worked out one season. They made it to the finals, got up 2-0, and then Giannis wrote. That's all she wrote. They didn't win another game. So I would love to see Devin Booker playing winning basketball.
I would too, because it just doesn't seem like it's working out in Phoenix. I actually saw a trade proposal, I think it was yesterday, and it didn't involve D-Book, but it did involve Phoenix, and it's why I'm going to mention it. And it was really interesting. It was Zach LaVine to the Spurs, De'Aaron Fox to Phoenix, and the Kings get Jalen Green and someone else. And I actually wasn't too upset about it because I was like, get off Zach LaVine's contract, take a chance on Jalen Green. Like, if we could just redo the Fox trade, that'd be great, but there is no revisionist history. You don't get a redo button. And so if the Kings could get off of Zach LaVine's contract, De'Aaron Fox moves somewhere else because it's ultimately not going to work out for him long-term in San Antonio just because of the great pieces that they have there with Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper. And you have San Antonio getting another scorer and a guy who is just a straight-up scorer. That could be interesting. And then as it pertains to Devin Booker, which led us to even talking about this, Devin Booker gets traded to Detroit. And then what does Detroit give up for Devin Booker would really be the question, because everyone would love to put these all-star players in better spots or with a better fit, but ultimately it always has to be, okay, what is the team giving up for them? And so that would really be interesting. And the last thing I'll say in regard to this series before we make our predictions is Jalen Duren, he has had an all-star season. He's been great, but he just has not been playing well, as you already said, in these playoffs. He stepped up when Cade was out. A lot of other Pistons stepped up when Cade was out, but he's in a contract year, and he's had an all-star season, but recency bias, people are going to remember what he did in the playoffs and what he didn't do in the playoffs. And so I'm rooting for Jalen Duren to play better so that he can get the biggest bag possible, as I'm always rooting for NBA players to get the biggest contract that they can as long as they're deserving of it. Also, Tobias Harris. He has gotten a lot of slander in the past for his performances with the Philadelphia 76ers in the playoffs, among other teams. Tobias Harris has come to play in these playoffs, so kudos to him as well. Now, Kevin, let's predict the series. Who do you got and how many games?
I want the Cavs to make it to the ECF and lose, and then they say we're just LeBron James away. I want them to go back home. So with that being said, I need the Cavs to win. I don't care. They can win in 7. They can win in 6. I just need the Cavs to win. I need them to get to that spot where they've never gotten before with Donovan Mitchell. And then you look around and say, James Harden, Evan Mobley, LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen. Let's do it. Let's bring the King home for a fair world tour. So I'm going to take the Cavs to win in 7.
Series, and I didn't really know which way to go because my guy Keith Jogonatis, who's joined us on the podcast plenty of times in the last couple of months, and prayers up to Pete Jogonatis, Keith's dad, who is in the hospital right now, and he's always been really good to me, even back in the day when Keith and I would be recording Facebook Live shows in Pete's garage, and he's always shown me so much love, and so I just want to give a shout out to Pete Jogonatis and let him know that he's in our prayers. But Keith has given me so much shit for my belief in these Cleveland Cavaliers. And so there was part of me that wanted to go with Cleveland just to, continue riding that bandwagon and continue riding the train. But that all changed when it came to what I saw Sunday morning. And it was a feature on ESPN by Dave McMenamin about Duncan Robinson and what he has experienced in the last couple of years as it pertains to his family, specifically his brother, who dealt with substance abuse issues, and then he got sober, and then he ultimately ended up being diagnosed with schizophrenia and later committed suicide. And the fact that Duncan Robinson was willing to share that story and bring awareness to it, it really touched me in a way that I'm rooting for him. I already was a fan of Duncan Robinson, but the fact that he's willing to share that story, specifically when it comes to this time of year, when this is the most important time of year, when it comes to focus and locking in, and that he's sharing that story leading into the NBA playoffs, that really touched my heart. And so for that reason, I'm rooting for the Pistons in this series, and I got the Pistons in 7 games. So now, Kevin, finally here on episode 189 of Stats Over Politics, let's get to the last conference semifinal series that we have yet to address, and that is the Thunder beating the Lakers 108-90 as Kevin shakes his head for the audio-only listeners. We heard Kevin's dismay in the intro of today's podcast that he thought LeBron would get it done. The Lakers get out to a 7-0 start in this game, only to lose to the Thunder by 18 points. Shout out to Jared McCain, who the 76ers basically just gave up. Sam Presti makes another fantastic move, and Jared McCain was the catalyst who really put the Thunder over the hump late in this game, because the Thunder in the second half, they ended up getting out to a lead. They were going back and forth between 8 to 12 points. But Jared McCain is the one who was knocking down threes consistently in that fourth quarter that led to the Thunder winning this game by 18 points. LeBron had a good game. Austin Reeves, not so much. As we were talking about in our pre-show meeting, Austin Reeves has really struggled since he came back from injury. I mentioned to you that, as you said, and I'll give you your credit without just regurgitating it, without giving you your credit, as you mentioned, he never really got a chance to get his feet under him and get a game where he had a get right game or just to get back in the flow of things. And he basically had to try and do that in practice. NBA games are different. NBA playoff games are far different. And so that's a factor. But also what I mentioned to you is Austin Reeves very likely could still be playing hurt right now. And he rushed back just to be able to try and compete because he knew LeBron by himself probably wasn't going to get the job done. And so he rushed back. Luka Doncic is still out. That's certainly a factor. But Austin Reeves has struggled. And I think the two things that you and I mentioned together is probably why. Nevertheless, the Thunder are the superior team in this series. If Luka Doncic was playing, you could make an argument that the Lakers may be able to compete. But Luka's out, and we don't know when he's coming back. The Thunder are the reigning champions. They seem to be steamrolling their way to a repeat as they beat the Lakers by 18 points in game one of this conference semifinal series. Kevin, I know that you are a LeBronologist, so this game hurt your heart. But overall, what was your reaction to this game?
To the people that are just going to look at the box score, the box score looks a lot worse. The game was very competitive. To about almost the end of the third quarter. And then, like Shaun mentioned, this Thunder team is just so deep. Jared McCain was able to hit two threes in the fourth quarter, I believe, and one in the late third. So for him to have that impact to close the game just goes to show how deep this team is. You know, there was a guy named A.J. Mitchell who didn't get off the bench this last finals run, and now he's a six-man. So they have the Alex Carusos, they have the Cason Wallaces, they have so much depth. They have the Isaiah Joes of the world, the other Jalen Williams. They have guys to throw out there that are just going to be great defenders, and they're going to make plays. Shea he didn't score 20 points, and he had 6 turnovers. If you would have told me this morning they're going to hold Shea to 18 points and 7 turnovers, I'm saying the Lakers win. The Lakers came out and gave all they could. They basically said, SGA, you're not going to beat us. We're going to make the other guys beat us. And today, the other guys beat them. LeBron James was able to go 27 points, 3 threes, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds. So he's able to still have productive numbers. But again, it comes back to Austin Reeves. 8 points, 0 of 5 from 3, 3 of 16 from the field. It's really hard to play yourself into shape. And it's hard to play into shape in the regular season. This is the playoffs. This is a win-or-go-home situation, and for Austin Reeves to still kind of be possibly playing injured, playing himself into shape is really going to hinder the Lakers. I was a big advocate for him sitting out the whole first round because the game when he came back, they got blown out because you're now telling a guy like Luke Kennard, who's been on fire, to take a back seat because Austin Reeves needs his shots, he needs the ball. So it really messed up their rhythm, and it got the Rockets a victory. But the Lakers were really in this game. But Jared Vanderbilt goes down. So this is a team that's already not deep, losing more and more bodies. DeAndre Ayton's been playing well. So that's a very nice thing to see for Laker fans. LeBron's playing great. They can get Austin Reeves to come and just give them 2 good games of Austin Reeves basketball where he's scoring north of 25 points a night. I think they can do it, especially without a Jalen Williams. But like Big Perk says, role players play good at home. So we'll see if these role players can continue to contribute on the road. But like I said, this game was very competitive towards the end, and then they kind of just pulled away. So a lot of good things to say from Shaun's guy, JJ Redick. So he'll make the adjustments, and we'll continue to see what game 2 looks like.
I believe in JJ Redick, and so we'll see what happens in this series. Obviously, I'm a fan of JJ Redick, but not a fan of the Los Angeles Losers. And so I'm kind of torn in that regard. But now, Kevin, if you could, please give me your prediction for this series.
LeBron is 7. I'm gonna go down swinging.
Whoa.
I'm gonna go down swinging. They're gonna figure it out because these other guys aren't gonna continue to play this great. I think LeBron James is going to be able to figure out a way to get it done. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be him. And I think Luka comes back. I think Luka comes back game 3, game 4. So all they really need to do is get one. And you're telling one person with the life on the line to go get one win? I think LeBron James can do it. LeBron and Austin Reeves can do it. And I say that because I especially don't believe in Chet Holmgren. And Jalen Williams not coming back possibly this series. I think his absence is gonna show because we talked about the AJ Mitchells and how they had a great role tonight. But like I said, it's at home. You're sleeping in your own bed. Let's see what happens when they go to LA.
It will be interesting to see if Luka Doncic is able to return in this series, because that would obviously be a game changer. And when it comes to my prediction, that I will give in a moment, I don't think Luka's going to come back in this series, unfortunately. Just for the sake of good basketball, I would love to see Luka come back, send this series. Because if Luka comes back, this is by far the best series remaining in these playoffs. But if Luka doesn't, then the Thunder, they may have their way with the Lakers. But kudos, I hate on the Lakers, but kudos to them for how they played in tonight's game. They really competed. As you said, yeah, the final score, those people who may only look at the box score see, okay, they won by 18 points. But as you already said, this game was competitive from start to finish. As I already said earlier, the Lakers got out to a 7-0 start in this game. But then the Thunder, they just continued to chip away, chip away, chip away. I'm going to go with the Thunder to win this series in 5 games. If Luka was playing in this series, I would say Thunder in 7. But without Luka Doncic, I think the Thunder finished this series off in 5 games. And to be honest, I'm giving them a gentleman's sweep because of LeBron James and because of the respect that I have for the greatest player of all time. He'll get one, just like he did in the 2017 NBA Finals. He'll get one, but he's overmatched otherwise without Luka Doncic, in my opinion. Even without J-Dub, I think that the Lakers are overmatched in this series. Now, the one other thing that I want to mention when it comes to this series, because, Kevin, I know that you're not much of a WWE fan like I am obsessed with WWE, and Jaevon is a fan from his childhood. But even for people who aren't a fan of the product, they know the name Ric Flair, the Nature Boy.
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Well, Ric Flair, he's an alcoholic, and he was active on Twitter tonight with those Twitter fingers as he says, Luka, that Luka Doncic, please get in the game. Take a shot of cortisone and deal with the pain. They're paying you $50 million a year, and you're not there. WTF. I hope at Genie Bus trades you next year. Nobody wants a lame duck on their team. Ric Flair had a lot to say, and I don't know if a tweet from the Nature Boy will necessarily change when Luka Doncic comes back, but I just thought that was absolutely crazy.
Spot on. Hey, man, look, this playoffs. You went to Germany, you got what you needed to get. Let's go.
All right, fair enough. Any final thoughts, Kevin, before we get on out of here?
Next time we talk, Lakers will be up. Don't know when that will be. Shaun and I were talking about finding good times to recap games, in a bunch. So after all the game 2s, game 3s like that. So just turn on the notifications. And like I said, next time we're on here, LeBron James, Luke will probably be back, and the Lakers are going to be licking their chops because they're going to beat the Timberwolves at 4.
Dang. Wow. And you know what? I'm going to leave it there. Nothing else to say. Make sure to give us a like on YouTube. It helps us a lot. If you enjoy the podcast, hit subscribe to get notifications when we go live. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at StatsOverPolitics and on X at StatsOverPolitics. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on all podcast platforms. And if you're enjoying the show, give us those 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. As you guys have been tuned in to episode number 189, Stats Over Politics. For my guys, Jaevon Toddy, Kevin Dent, Alex Dent, Kaz Johnson, and Gary Singh. Also, Keith Joganatis. I've been your host, Sean Holko. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week on another episode of Stats Over Politics. Peace.